welcome to this session on Israel, the mood of the country, which replaces the title we were using up to last Wednesday night, the 21st Knesset election, April 2019. I had timed the date of tonight's meeting very carefully many months ago, in the knowledge that even with an extension to the deadline for forming a coalition government, by last Wednesday, everything had to be settled. Neither I nor our speaker tonight, James Marlow, anticipated a failure to agree a coalition for the first time in the history of the State of Israel, that the Knesset would be dissolved and that we would be looking towards the 22nd Knesset elections this coming September. I'm sure that our speaker tonight will have much to say about the ongoing instability in Israeli politics, but I would like to share one personal anecdote with you. Back in the 1980s, the Board of Deputies used to organise fact-finding missions to Israel. It was the time when neither the Alignment Party nor Likud, each with 40 seats, could form a standalone coalition, and they decided to form a national unity government. The threshold for entering the Knesset was then a mere 1%. I asked Shimon Peres why, with 97 seats out of a total of 120, he did not wish to raise the threshold to establish greater political stability in Israel. He said that he would like to increase the percentage, but Yitzhak Shamir did not support such a move. The following day, we met Yitzhak Shamir, and I posed him the identical question. He said that he would be willing to increase the threshold, but he wasn't supported by Shimon Peres. To tell us how things have changed since then, or possibly not, our guest speaker is James Marlow, a well-known writer, journalist, and broadcaster who specialises in British and Israeli politics, along with Middle East and regional affairs, and is an experienced and effective media and public relations strategy and policy advisor. With more than 30 years broadcast journalist experience, James Marlow has been an anchor person, correspondent, reporter, producer, writer and researcher with networks such as CNN, ITN, Euronews, Al Jazeera, LBC Radio, Reuters, and Israel's former IBA News. He has written for the Daily Mail, Daily Express, Jerusalem Post, and several Jewish publications, including the Jewish Weekly, where he was head of news for its first year. You will have read his Israel election news and analysis before the April elections. In addition, James is a communications and media trainer, expert, delivering classes and workshops in personal development, self-confidence, communication, and much more, including Israel advocacy. He is the founder of the Communications Bureau, which delivers motivational classes, spokesperson and public relations work, advising and preparing hundreds of high-profile people for TV and audiences, including British and Israeli politicians, entertainment and business people, teachers and rabbis. James was based in Jerusalem for 10 years as LBC's radio's Jerusalem correspondent, but also advised Knesset members and ministers on diaspora affairs and anti-Israel activity. Furthermore, he was responsible for the communications training at the Jewish Agency, Hag Shama, B'nai Akiva, Ministry for Foreign Affairs, and spoke to hundreds of visiting groups to Israel, including Birthright and students at the Hebrew University. Amongst his many tasks, he is currently writing a book on Jewish Palestine and how the Jews living in the British Mandate back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s were actually known as the Palestinians. We eagerly await what James has to tell us tonight about the mood in Israel now that another election has been called, and we might reflect on some obvious parallels with the state of politics in the UK.
Thank you very much, Spencer. Very nice, warm welcome over there. I had no idea I'd done so much, really. In fact, actually, I'm quite impressed. I'd like to meet this guy myself. A very good evening to you. Thank you very much for coming along this evening. As Spencer hinted at in his introduction, when we spoke about me coming along here this evening to speak, it was around November time, and I anticipated that perhaps there was going to be an election either March or May, because I follow Israeli politics and have done since the 1980s. And very much have spoken quite a lot about the different political parties, the candidates, the mergers, the breakups, and indeed all of the other things that take place in Israeli politics. In fact, you could say that I live it, I breathe it, sleep with it, eat with it, and have completely immersed myself in it, which is not very healthy, I have to tell you. And when I hear other people, they just don't listen to politics anymore, I think, wow, wish I could do that. So I was booked around November time, and we anticipated in December that because the general election was going to be called on April the 9th, generally, if anyone here knows how the political process works in Israel, when the election is finished and that the votes are all added up and the seats are all made according to proportional representation, you then have 28 days for a government to be formed. Now, every government that has been formed so far, to the best of my knowledge, always uses that extra 2 weeks. So that pretty much is 28 days plus the 14 days, which brought us up to the end of May, the 29th of May. So I think maybe a good place to start this evening, because I expected to be speaking about this, is what took place on election day. Is that a good place to start? So that's back on April the 9th, Tuesday, April the 9th. And I had the opportunity to speak with Ze'ev Elkin, who is one of the senior Likud members of Knesset. He was here in London for the Yom Ha'atzmaut celebrations, and I got the opportunity to spend the Shabbat with him in Golders Green, and we had a meal together. And there was a few of us around the table, and I was sitting next to him, so we spoke about a lot of things. So I said, so what did Bibi think about the result? For those who don't know, and I didn't see this when I walked in because I could have quickly written down the results over here, but if you need them, please tell me and I'll start writing them out for you. But the Likud party received 35 seats. Extraordinary. I have been compiling the polls based on the main pollsters in Israel every single week for the newspaper called the Jewish Weekly. I'm no longer connected with them because they ran out of money, so they can't pay me anything more. But nevertheless, each week from January, I compiled the polls based on 7 or 8 pollsters in Israel and gave the average number in this particular newspaper, which people could pick up free. The Likud party picked up 35 seats. By the way, so did the opposition party, blue and white, 35 seats. So I asked Mr. Elkin, who we were sitting next to, I said, what did Bibi think? Did he think that he was going to get 35 seats? He said, no way. He actually was really surprised that he got anywhere near 35 seats, because just a week earlier, some of the polls were putting him at 26, 27, 28 seats. So it's quite remarkable. I was on Sky News the following morning. They invited me in, and they just said, we want a little bit of a rundown of what happened in the Israeli election and what you expect is going to happen and who's going to form the government. So I walk into to Sky News, and they firstly take you into makeup, and then they ask you if you want a quick haircut. I said, no, thank you, I just had a haircut. And then they take you upstairs. It's a very nice building. And I'm sitting down next to somebody who is an Israeli chap. His name is Yossi. And they never told me about Yossi. And I've been in this situation beforehand as well. I figured that he is also going to be speaking about the Israeli election. And I bet they've paired him off with me. So in other words, he's going to say one thing, and I'm going to say something. And I wasn't brought in for this. I was actually brought in to just give a general analysis of the overall results and what I thought would take place, and try and be a little bit unbalanced. Unbiased. Balanced, but unbiased. But actually, I did go a little bit unbalanced because based on some of the things he said. So he looked at me, and I looked at him, and there was a couple of chairs. They call it like the green room. And I said, hello. And he said, hello. You waiting to go in? What are you going to speak about? So I said, I think I'm waiting for the same thing for you. Anyway, we were picked up, we went inside, there's a commercial break, they come down in Citizen, I got near to the presenter. And the presenter asks me, as we came out of the commercial break, so what do you think? Is Bibi going to form a coalition? And I said, he's a wizard of a campaigner, he's very experienced, he's got 35 seats, I've done the sums, and as it looks right now, he is going to have a majority of at least 61 seats. And he's done a great job. He really knows how to take the votes from the other smaller parties. And even better, his two rivals a man called Naphtali Bennett, who left the Bayat Yehudi Jewish Home Party to form his own party. At one point, they were polling 7 or 8 seats. The new party was called The New Right. And as you know, he never got through. He fell below the minimum threshold of 3.25%. The other main rival, which was great for Netanyahu, because Netanyahu did not want to work with Bennett, and Bennett doesn't particularly like Netanyahu. The other person was Moshe Feiglin. For those who don't know Moshe Feiglin, he is an odd chap, I have to tell you. He is somebody who is right-wing, meaning that we need to make it a religious state. We should rebuild the Beit HaMikdash, the great synagogue in the old city. And we should change the whole justice system to make it more halakhic permissible in Israel. Okay, that's right wing. But at the same token, he also reached out to those on the far left to legalize cannabis, that everyone should be able to smoke cannabis, and that meat and milk should be served in all the restaurants. It's up to the proprietor if they want to go ahead and serve non-kosher food. And you should also bring in pork and bacon for all those people who wish to have eggs and bacon in the morning. Personally, I think he was smoking some of that cannabis that he wanted to legalize when he came up with his manifesto. But the thing is that there is 2 green parties on the left that generally campaign for cannabis legalization in Israel. Now, just to make sure that there's no misunderstanding over here, Israel, as you know, is a world leader in medical research, and it's actually leading right now in those who need cannabis in order to go ahead and ease, for example, body pain or some type of a medical condition that they have. And as somebody who was very much against legalizing cannabis, I have to tell you that looking into some of the evidence, that it does seem that those people who do have various types of illnesses, cannabis has been proven by medical prescription, of course, prescribed by doctors, to ease that pain and to prolong life. And so I'm all for that. That's fine. But Moshe Feiglin was promoting cannabis for everyone and anyone. Anyway, he was part of the Likud party at once upon a time. He actually went head-to-head with Netanyahu twice, possibly 3 times, for the leadership of the Likud party. He actually became a Likud MK. And at the last election, the one before the last time, in 2015, he was actually given a reasonable spot on the Likud party list. It's done differently over there. You vote for a party, but you don't vote for candidates. So they don't have representatives in constituencies like we have over here. That means the politicians are not answerable to the people. So basically, that's why politicians in Israel like to move from one party to another. So in other words, if they get bumped down by the leader of the party or by the Labour Party, the Meretz Party actually allow their membership to vote. If you get bumped down to an unrealistic spot, so I don't know, say number 15, and the party is only likely to get 7 or 8 seats, there's no chance you're going to get into the Knesset. So therefore, if you can actually go to another party and try and get in, like for example, the Blue and White Party, which is the party that was at one time polling more than 30 seats. If I can get on that list, that's good for me. And Tzipi Livni did that very well. She was actually at one time on the right of the Likud party, and then she left the Likud party and went to a new party formed by Ariel Sharon called Kadima. And then from Kadima, which fell apart after she couldn't put together a government, I think in 2009, she then formed her own party called Hatznua. And then from Hatznua, it merged with Labour, and she became part of the Labour Party before the current Labour leader, Avi Gabay, ousted her. Is this familiar with anyone here? This is yes, by the way. This is no, just so. Is there anyone still here? Anyone still? Yeah? Okay. Got a couple of yeses over here. So that's how the political system works. Anyway, so I'm speaking to Ze'ev Elkin, And he tells me that Bibi was very, very, very surprised. But he was very worried that particular day. About 5 o'clock, Bibi calls Ze'ev Elkim and says, we've got to do something. I'm losing seats. And they can actually keep track, just like the main political parties in this country can keep track of who your members and who your party support is if you're coming out to vote or not. So 5 o'clock, they decide to put together a team of 200 party helpers and move out to an area in Judea. I don't remember exactly which town or which villages it were. And as a result of doing that and managing to drive people down to the polling stations, he reckons he got an extra 3, possibly 4 more seats in that last-minute work. Now, it's very strange in Israel how the electoral process works because, as I said, there were 47 political parties. Did I say that? No, 47 political parties registered to run in this recent general election. Once again, that's 47. That's the most ever. That's a record for Israel. And Israel generally breaks records anyway with political parties. Out of those 47, 41 parties actually ran because the others, they ran out of money. In fact, 1 or 2 of them actually couldn't pay for the advertising that you get for radio and television adverts. So 41 ran, which again is a record. 11 political parties got into the Knesset. And the 2 main parties, Likud got 35 seats, and Blue and White got 35 seats. The Labour Party, which used to be the main opposition party, really disappeared almost into the fire of insignificance. It went down to 6 seats. Quite extraordinary. And that is because, there's a number of reasons actually, but one of the reasons is because there's so much infighting that takes place within the Labour Party. In fact, much more so than, I would say, than the Likud party. The infighting which takes place turns off a lot of voters. And the other thing which I mentioned on Sky was because the Labour Party has been devastated, they're still associated with what was known as the peace process. The Oslo Accords, which failed miserably, as we know, signed in 1993. And as a result of the massive wave of suicide bombings across the country, which was pretty devastating to a lot of people, including myself, the Labour Party lost support. Now, it's true to say that those people that might vote for the Labour Party therefore went into another party, started to vote for the next possible rival, which is Blue and White. So I would say it is true that those who may have previously voted for the Labour Party, they saw the polling was really low. They said it's a wasted vote. Let's just go with another party. This other party, anyone know about the Blue and White Party? Anyone else want to speak? Anyone know about the Blue and White Party? No? Okay, so Michael here knows about the Blue and White Party. Anyone else? Oh, okay. So so if you agree with me, please nod your head. And if you disagree, just shout out whatever you want to shout out. The Blue and White Party was a merger of 3 political parties. 2 of them new, and 1 of them was already established. Kahol V'Lavan came together under the slogan, anyone but Bibi, which didn't go down too well with some of the people. And from a political analyst point of view, I think, in my opinion, it's a better idea to come up with your own policies and get onto a platform and speak to the people and tell them how you're going to make life better for them and better for the country, rather than always focusing on something negative. Anyone but Bibi. It was the Israel Resilience Party, led by Benny Gantz, the former IDF Chief of Staff. The number 2 position in that Blue and White Party was Yair Lapid, from Yesh Atid. He's been around for some time. He was quite popular, but now he can't seem to get above 11 or 12 seats because the people feel he's not the right person to become the next prime minister. The number 3 was Gabi Ashkenazi, another former IDF chief of staff. The number 4, it's just escaped me right now, but it was Shaul Mofaz. Sorry, not Shaul Mofaz. Moshe Ya'alon, Moshe Boogie Ya'alon, who was also a former chief of staff. It's the party full of, it's the IDF party, if you like. It's the Israel Defense Party. And the 5th person was the person who had fronted, who was head of the Histadrut in Israel, which is the main TUC union party. And then they decided who was going to be the next set of candidates of the rest of the list, which they'd set up. So a lot of people went to the polls on the basis that they wanted to kick out Bibi Netanyahu no matter what. And that was the reason why Bibi did exactly the same thing this time as he did in the 2015 election, appealing to the right-wing voters who weren't going to vote for the Likud party, but were going to vote for the right-wing parties, like Bayit Yehudi, like Yisrael Beitenu, Avigdor Lieberman's party. Take the votes from them and add it on to my party, so I've got a better chance of being asked to form the next government. Because the thing is this, generally, whichever political party gets more seats, that is the party that the president will ask to form the head. The head of that particular party is asked to form the next government. He normally, I say normally because there was one case back in 2009, which it didn't happen. It was actually Tzipi Livni, who had got 29 seats leading the Kadima party after Ehud Olmert had to step down, and we know what happened to him. And Shaul Mofaz was kicked out of the number 1 position. So she took over. She had 1 more seat more than the Likud party led by Benjamin Netanyahu. The problem was that she alienated herself from the religious parties. She said some pretty negative things against Shas and Yahadut Torah, the United Torah Judaism, which is made up of 2 main Orthodox Ashkenaz factions. And they weren't going to work with her, and she insisted she was not going to work with them. Well, guess what? If you're not going to work with them, you can't form a coalition. You don't have that 61 magic number in the 120-seat Knesset. It's simple math. And it's one of the reasons why Netanyahu does try and keep basic open channels with a lot of the parties on the center, to the right, the religious parties, in order to form a coalition, a workable coalition. Some people might criticize it and condemn it, and because every party wants have got their own personal interest to get something out of the government, which looks after the bank account, the finance minister, which of course normally would fall under Likud. In this particular case, it was falling under another party called Kulanu, but that's something else. Let me just take you back, as I'm talking away, I started speaking about Sky News. I'm speaking now, we were told we've got 3 minutes. So you've got to speak really quickly. You've got to focus on what you're going to say and how you're going to say it, get the point across. We ended up at 7 or 8 minutes. He then moves over to Yossi. So Yossi is from one of the universities over here. And Yossi says, Netanyahu, it's a disgrace. He's won again. This is real dangerous for our democracy. He's anti-peace. He's completely against any type of peace with the Palestinians. He is somebody who is the worst corrupt leader ever in Israel's history. And we are just so sad. We just don't know what's going to happen. The poor Palestinians are really in dire straits right now. And us, we don't know what's going to happen. What we want is peace and security and economic stability. But we're not going to have it under this government. And as far as the corruption goes, the submarine case, for example, it's unbelievable. At which point, I had to jump in. And I said to him, Yossi, I'm very glad you brought up the submarine case, Because out of the 4 cases that the Attorney General, Avihai Mandelblit, has brought against Netanyahu, he dropped that submarine case because he said there was no case to answer. In other words, there was no evidence whatsoever to nail Netanyahu. For those who are not familiar with the submarine case, Israel, a few years back, bought several submarines from Germany. And there was some business people involved, and some people who were associated with Netanyahu were said to have maybe made a little bit of money on the side. So they pinned that on Netanyahu as well, but the evidence said no. So that case was dropped. That's exactly the case that Yossi on Sky News is bringing up. And I just happened to know about it, so I said that that was the case that was dropped. He then moved over to another case. And the other case was about a wealthy Israeli businessman who had lived in America for many years, was close with Netanyahu and his family, was planning to move back to Israel, and this wealthy businessman had supposedly, allegedly, or probably did, shower the Netanyahus with lots of gifts. What were those gifts? Cigars. I brought that up on Sky News. I said, I don't particularly like cigars. I don't know what he's doing with all these cigars, but I don't really care. What else? Suits? I haven't heard that one. I had champagne and some jewelry. There were some lavish gifts that were supposedly. So how comes they still voted him in? How comes the Likud party, led by Netanyahu, still got 35 seats? And whatever your politics is in here, this is my feeling, this is my understanding, that Netanyahu has been in power since 2009 continuously, plus the 3 years from the 90s, 96 to 99, when Ehud Barak knocked him out. By the way, with the help of the Americans. If you remember, in 1999, Bill Clinton, who was president at the time, he sent over his own personal political consultants who got him elected to be president of the United States. He sent them over to work with the Labour Party in order to get Ehud Barak. Plus you had the media who also said that Netanyahu was very corrupt. And he lost. And Netanyahu quit politics. He left the Knesset, came back a couple of years later. But you got 10 years of what I would call political and economic stability. There has never been a time in Israel, and I understand that it's quite difficult for people who make aliyah, who struggle a lot with rising prices, and I think we can generally agree that the wages are generally pretty low in Israel. And unless you get yourself into a certain niche, or you come up with one of the startup companies, tech, artificial intelligence, not insemination. Just wanted to see if you were still with me there. Some of you are. That's good. And all the robots and things like that. It's all being made, cyber security, all being made in Israel, as you know. This is a period in the last 10 years that more countries around the world who have absolutely no official contacts whatsoever with the state of Israel are sending their leaders to come into Israel. I have been for the last 3 years at one of the big high-tech conferences, which normally falls around February, March, at the main Binyanei HaUmah convention center in Jerusalem, where there's 16,000 people that go to that convention center to see the latest drones released, medical research, all these different devices. There are people coming in from Islamic countries, from African countries, from Asian countries. It's the reason why the Indian Prime Minister came to Israel. He openly said, we want what Israel's got. Saudi, Oman, the UAE are sending leaders to Israel because they want what Israel's got, and Israel's very happy. The African Islamic countries are coming to it. People see this. They say, look, the economy is doing okay. Political stability is fairly good, with the exception of Gaza, and there is a big problem on the border in the north with Lebanon and Syria, and the Iranians emerging in Syria and in Lebanon, and it is a major, major issue. But one of the reasons why Lieberman, who gave a press conference last week, just before the vote took place to dissolve this last Knesset, which was the 21st Knesset, one of the things that Lieberman said was he was against Netanyahu for a whole bunch of reasons. One of them was that he allowed 30 million, I believe it was $30 million to go into Gaza, which goes into the Hamas government. It wasn't the Israelis that transferred the money, it was Qatar who transferred that money over. Lieberman criticized him. He said, they're firing missiles at us and we're paying them 30 million. The reason why he did that, in my opinion, is because that there are people who are having a difficult time over there. I won't say it's not poverty over there. There are hundreds of tons worth of goods and services and medicine that do go into Gaza. But it seems to be that morale is very down over there. Electricity is cut. And so it is a difficult time in Gaza. Allow the money to go in. Lieberman criticized Netanyahu for this. He also criticized Netanyahu because recently more than 700 missiles were fired into Israel. Israel did hit back, but the way Israel hits back is something that Lieberman is completely against. They hit back on the basis that they will make a telephone call to the Egyptians, who are very connected with the Hamas leaders, even though they don't particularly like each other, but they've got that connection, to say that this particular building is going to be hit. Hamas headquarters is over here, is going to be hit. You've got a factory over there, it's probably being used for arms weaponry. That's going to be hit. They give notice. So when Israel blows up buildings and you see those great big flashes of light, precision strike by the Israelis, they're not knocking out any of the people. BBC, are you listening? Generally, I mean, sometimes you hear 5, 6 Palestinians, they get caught in it, or they stay in the building, or they leave, or they're told to stay in the building. But they're not taking out the people. They're taking out the buildings and sending a message to Hamas that we've got the military might. Lieberman doesn't like this. He said, if you're going to take them out, take them out. It's going to be a big war, I have to tell you. I don't think there's too many people in this room, including myself, that would like to see an end of the Islamists in Gaza. And it's not, by the way, just Hamas or Islamic Jihad or the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, that have become more and more radical and more religious, by the way, and the Palestine Resistance Movement. There are also some other radical groups that have identified with the Anseh Beit Maqdis group in northern Syria, which allied itself with the ISIS group as well. They're all in Gaza. How did they get into Gaza? Through the underground tunnels from Egypt. The Egyptians openly blow them up, but they make more and more. They send people down, they dig, and it's a big problem. But these underground tunnels are not something that we might see our kids or grandkids on the beaches just making one of those holes in the sand. These are sophisticated underground cities. I hope to get the opportunity to see one myself in 2 or 3 weeks' time, which I'm just, if I can, to try and set it up, because a couple of other my colleagues have seen this, and I'd like to actually experience it myself. But it's proper steel metal, which is all covered, big rooms, and that's exactly where the Islamists hide when they fire missiles. And a perfect example of this was, you know, I think it was back in the, it may have been back in the 2014 war, which I know is several years ago, but nevertheless, it's still very relevant. There was a Sky broadcast, I forget the name of the correspondent who got over to Gaza, and it was shown at 10:30 at night, which I happened to be watching. And his cameraman had put up a stand. They had a camera on top of the stand, similar to the cameras just over here. And it was pointing in a certain area. It was waste ground. And this particular presenter, correspondent, was going to be standing in front of the camera. The camera was still running. because it's all on digital right now, so you don't run out of tape like in the old days. And they were doing something in their bag. Big bags, they had some equipment in there. And all of a sudden, the ground opened. Literally, it's like Thunderbirds, the Thunderbird cartoon from the 1970s. The ground opened, the grass, a James Bond movie. 5 or 6 missiles suddenly were thrown up. The camera was on it. And then another 5 or 6 thrown up, fired, and were headed over towards Israel. It closed again. The correspondent, whilst the camera was running, actually said to the cameraman, we've got to get out of here quick. Because generally, in a war situation, when missiles are fired, 2 minutes, IDF jets will be above, and they take it out. But the only problem is, they couldn't take out that steel covering because the underground tunnel, literally the underground city as such, is protected. And I can't tell you what will take that out, but it's not going to be sending in IDF troops into it because it's going to be a long war. And anyway, the point I'm trying to make is, by the way, they didn't show it the following morning. I saw it at 10:30. It was just shown. And I reckon that because the Sky News presenter was in Gaza, he was visited by Hamas people, because we know this from other journalists who've actually said this when they came back to Israel, and told, remove that sequel that you're running on Sky News. Delete it. Make sure it doesn't get shown again. Otherwise, we will not give you entry into Gaza. And if a correspondent doesn't get entry into their certain areas, like Ramallah in Judea and Samaria, known today as the West Bank, if you don't have access, in other words, the authorities over there won't give you a press card, won't get you in there, then the network is probably going to let you go because you're no good to us. If they don't like you, we've got to find someone else who they're going to like. And it's one of the reasons why journalists have to behave themselves when they're in these areas, because you're going to get a knock on the door where you're staying. And they're going to tell you, you don't broadcast that. You got it? And I know this directly from 2 journalists, one from Sweden, one from France, and there was also an Indian one who also spoke about it on social media. Obviously, they never went back in. It's a problem, but it's something that I don't think enough people really know about. So anyway, Sky News. I'm moving around here quite a lot. Is that all right? I'm swimming. I'm just drifting around. I've got some notes, but I felt it was better just to look at you rather than look down over here like this. But, we can try it this way if you want. No? This is better? Okay. Keep going. Oh, my wires are coming out now. Excuse me. So anyway, we finished with Sky News. And I think Yossi was quite impressed with some of the names that I came up with hitting back about the cigars, the champagne, the gifts, and talking literally about how Netanyahu was a wizard in taking away votes from Moshe Feiglin and Naftali Bennett and should be able to put together a coalition. Yossi comes up to me. He says, well done, James. He shakes my hand. Left-wingers don't do that. They start screaming and shouting at you afterwards. We walk outside to the car park. He's got a car waiting for him, taking to Al Jazeera. He's going to say the same nonsense on Al Jazeera. They won't use me anymore. I used to be their Israel political analyst when I was based in Israel. And then Qatar came in, and they pumped in a great deal of money in Qatar, into Al Jazeera network, on the basis that you wouldn't have anyone speaking in a positive light about Israel, unless, of course, it was a war situation where you could actually get an official IDF spokesperson or a member of Knesset. Sipi Hotoveli from the Likud party is more on the right of the party. She goes on there a few times in one of the shows, but she goes as a representative of the Likud party. So me, just as some analyst on behalf of Israel. We don't need him. So they stopped calling me. And I know that because there's a Jewish girl who works at the office here in London, and I gave her a call and she said, James, it's a bit of a problem at the moment. If I hear of any changes, I'll let you know. And I knew what that meant. And she's still there because she wants her job. So we start talking in the car park, myself and Yossi, and I said, why do you say all this nonsense? He said, it's not nonsense. I said, you must be monitoring the Israeli news. You must know that the Attorney General has dropped the submarine case. He said, yeah, but it's not right. He did something wrong. I said, but the evidence is not there. This is the Israeli Attorney General who's looked at the evidence. You haven't seen the evidence. Why would you say that on Sky News? He said, well, I don't like Netanyahu. I said, that's fine, but don't blaspheme the entire country. This is a democratic general election. Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen, the leader of the Palestinian Authority, PLO. He's in his 15th year of a 4-year cycle. The day before the general election, it's true, the day before the general election, he tweeted out from his own Twitter account, social media, wishing good luck to all the Israelis voting in today's election. I tweeted back to say, you should learn from this. You should hold one yourself. 15th year of a 4-year cycle, and he will never, ever hold another general election. He's now 83 years old. He's quite sick. He hasn't prepared anyone to take over the PLO. There's no younger movement. They have complete control. And who knows what's going to happen after he goes. And by the way, it's the same thing in Hamas-controlled Gaza. They had a general election. The Hamas won. Do you know when that was? How long ago that was? 2, 5, 6, 7, any more on 7? I think it was 2006. 2006, I believe. But just to be clear, because I remember speaking about this years ago at the time, when somebody said to me on Talk Sport at the time, Talk Sport in those days was actually talk radio stroke sports, because through the night they did news. And somebody said to me, I forget the name of the presenter who moved on to LBC now, and he's now no longer with LBC, but he said, but James, Hamas were democratically elected in Gaza. I said, you're absolutely right. Ian, not Ian Dale, Ian somebody other. He used to do late evenings. Anyway, not important. So I said, you're absolutely right. They were democratically elected, but it's not the same type of democracy that we have here in the UK. For example, our democracy lasts longer than 24 hours because for that 24-hour period, it was a pure democracy. People voted for Hamas because they saw the Fatah political movement taking a lot of the handouts from America, from the EU, from the UK, from the Arab countries, and pocketed them themselves. I know Fatah members in Jerusalem. They love Yasser Arafat. I'm thinking of one particular guy right now who was the manager of our building in Jerusalem. Yeah, you have Israeli Arabs who work in Israel. Yeah. Actually, he doesn't even have a passport, but he's got the card. I remember we used to sit down and have so many conversations in the Jerusalem Heights building in the city center of Jerusalem. He was a great fan. He was a Fatah member. He was a great fan of Arafat. I said, but what about all this money he pocketed? You do believe it? He said, of course he pocketed the money. I said, aren't you upset about that? He said, of course I'm upset about that, but he still put us on the map. If it wasn't for Yasser Arafat, nobody would know who we are today. I said, are you willing? What happened to the money? He said, it got buried with him. I said, what does that mean? He says, sorry? Right, so that's exactly what Iyad said. If you didn't hear, his wife's got it. His wife took a lot of that money, moved to Paris, and has a very nice lifestyle over in Paris with a great deal of that. I mean, we're talking billions. Billions. What can you do with all that money? That was supposed to go to the Palestinians. So I say to this chap on the radio, I say, but after the election and Hamas won, what did they do with the opposition? They rounded them up, Fatah. They tied their hands behind their backs. They took them up to the high buildings in Gaza City, and they pushed them off while they were still alive. And this is well documented. It was filmed when I clashed with George Galloway on the air. Sorry, I'm not sure you can say that name in this Beit Knesset, but with that man. And he was a great Fatah supporter before he realized that they weren't tough enough against Israel. Then he moved over to Hamas. And when I said that to him, I expected he was going to deny it. He didn't deny it. He moved on. He knew exactly what Hamas did to the Fatah people. That's not a democracy. One of the parties wins over here, manages to put together the government in the House of Commons. The opposition, let's take them up to Big Ben and push them off. Well, we don't do that over here. That's not how a democracy is run. And of course, there was no reply on the other side. So we've got to the situation right now in Israeli politics whereby Mr. Avigdor Lieberman, he felt that he couldn't work with Netanyahu for a number of reasons. One of those reasons is because that he felt that he wasn't strong enough, he wasn't right-wing enough, he wasn't hard enough against the Palestinian Islamists. Of course, as you probably know, some of you are probably thinking it right now, there was a little bit of an issue with the religious parties. Gentleman over there is nodding. Oh, yes, yeah, that's a big issue, mate. Not a little issue, big issue. The two main parties, Shas and United Torah Judaism. Shas, as you probably know, is the Sephardi, strictly Orthodox party. I don't use the word ultra. And United Torah Judaism is a merger of two factions, which is Agudat Yisrael, which represents the Hasidic movement, which is the Hasidic groups of Vishnitz, not Bells, Ger, thank you, Ger, Vishnitz, Ger, and a couple of others. I actually accidentally said Bells somewhere, and somebody pointed out to me I was wrong, and I checked it. I was wrong on that. And you know what? I'm so sorry. Bells is part of it. Bobov is not. So it's Ger, Vishnitz, and Bells are the three most well-known Hasidic groups. The other one is Degul HaTorah, which is the Ashkenazic, strictly Orthodox movement, the Litvak background, Lithuania background. They merged, and amazingly, they managed to get out their people. They got 8 seats. Shas got 8 seats. Together, that makes 16. I went to Rosh Pinah. One down there. The nursery school. Not recently, but a long time ago. And sorry, just a trip down memory lane over there, thank you. There was a law which has been postponed. In other words, it was actually Lieberman campaigned that all Israelis should do the army. So whether they are secular Israelis, because some secular Israelis get the exemption, those who work in kibbutzim, it's less now today than what it was. Those who actually run businesses and you can prove that your business is going to, because you're helping the economy. For illnesses and various other disabilities, you can get out of it. But of course, and also the Arabs, the Israeli Arabs, there's just under 1.8 million Arabs that live in Israel, Israeli citizens. Of course, that's how, actually some of them, by the way, some of them vote for the right-wing parties, believe it or not. Some of them send their kids to the Israeli army. Some of them are in the police force. Some of them don't. Some of them hate Israel, and they're Israeli Arabs. And Lieberman also wanted them to do the army, but of course he wanted the religious people to do the army as well. So there was an agreement whereby, I forget the name of the bill that was passed in the Knesset, but there was an agreement whereby somebody would select the best learners in yeshiva. And those people who could learn, those people who had the head for it, and they could do this every single day from 8 in the morning until 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. They could learn non-stop. And they had that ability to do that, to manage to keep religion going, to keep the yeshiva going. then they should be able to do so. Those who couldn't do it should do 2 or 3 years of yeshiva and then do what a lot of us do here in this country and in Europe and in America, is learn a profession, and learn how to make some money, and learn in the mornings and learn in the evenings. This went on for several years, and this postponement of this particular bill was another 6 months, similar to the US, what they did with the US embassy from Tel Aviv. That law was passed back in the 90s, but every president that came in, another 6 months. Nobody wanted to take the responsibility. Same thing in the Knesset today. It kept getting put off. And then legislation was being brought in. Lieberman dropped the idea of bringing in the Arabs. They said it would be impossible. We're never going to be able. There'll be riots across the country. There'll be destruction, international attention. We don't need that. Let's focus on the religious people and get them out of the yeshivas. Now, of course, the religious people responded in also an extremely negative way and went hardline. And there was a faction that broke away called the Jerusalem faction, which was actually pretty hardline. And they were the ones who was actually blocking up a lot of the traffic in the last couple of years in various places across the country. I was just thinking actually that I wrote an editorial about it in one of the Orthodox papers, because I knew the head of the movement, who's now passed away, Reb Shmuel Auerbach, because I lived in the same neighborhood as him, and I used to speak with him regularly. For those who, Reb Shmuel Auerbach was the son, one of the many sons of the very great halachic authority, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, who passed away in 1995, one of the great Torah leaders of the 20th century. And his son formed the faction, and it split the vote in the last general election of the religious party. Anyway, the bottom line is, without going through the internal deadline or details, Lieberman insisted that his plan in the last Knesset had to be that he wouldn't change it one bit, that there'll be a certain number of religious people that could stay in the yeshivas, but otherwise everyone else had to do the army, if not at 18, then when they got to 21. In other words, you learn for those 3 years, and then you do, and if not, you have to do something else. There was an agreement that was made, and the religious parties agreed that maybe we could just put it off a little bit longer and do Shirut Le'umi. In other words, they don't necessarily have to do the army, but they're religious people, and then perhaps maybe they could go into some of the very secular schools, and they could help people with regard to making mezuzot and tefillin, and helping people on the streets and in the schools, and just doing general national service that way. Lieberman said he was not going to back down on any of his original statements. He only got 5 seats in the last election, and he came out in front of the media and he said, I refuse to back down. The religious parties were willing to do a deal, but they said it's wrong to legislate in a Jewish country that you send all of the yeshiva, or a lot of the yeshiva boys, into the army immediately. Lieberman went much stronger than that, and he figured, and a lot of the political pundits in Israel feel that it was political maneuvering again. Politics in everything. If I keep on at this, if I keep looking at those television cameras on the evening news, that people will see me, I'll take votes from the other party. We might go to another general election, and my 5 seats will suddenly turn into 15 seats. That's exactly what he said. He said he expects to get 18 seats in the next general election. I think he's been spoken some of that stuff as well. There's no way he's going to get anywhere. He's not going to get double seats. But the polls are suggesting that he might get 7 or 8 seats. Where is it coming from? Not clear, actually. I don't know, because the polls are very similar to what they were last time. By the way, which means that when this next general election comes along, September the 17th, 9:30, September the 17th, if we still don't have a 61 majority, that means we go to another general election. And any idea how much this is costing the country? What would you say? 1 million? 2 million? 10 million? 10 million? 20 million? We got 20 over here. 20. Got one of those hammers. 20 million. Do I hear any more than 20 million? Are we talking shekels? Are we talking dollars? Italian lira? Okay, sterling. So they're estimating it, and this is what the President Reuven Rivlin said, estimating at more than 450 million shekels, which is approximately 50 million pounds. And they're not sure where that money is going to come from. Sorry? Yes. Yeah, so once again, let me just read. Let's say 100. Thank you for correcting me on that. Yes, 100 million for the second general election, bearing in mind that it looks like there's still going to be a hung parliament and we're going for a third one. That's the state of affairs right now. I mean, it was so crazy that even the President of the United States said, I wish the Israelis would get their politics sorted out. Because as a result of this, that deal of the century, that great peace deal where it's going to bring peace and security and prosperity to everyone, is now no longer on the table. It's been removed till after the next election. Because how are they going to sit down with an Israeli government and get the Palestinians to sit with this Israeli government, which they've already said they're not going to, whatever it is, because they don't like Trump, they're not going to do it. So, we are at a stalemate, and that's even without listing the political parties. 11 of them got into the Knesset. There are perhaps about another 40 that are going to run for the next election, and we don't know where we're going to be. But it is very exciting. And I can tell you that the longest prime minister ever in Israel was David Ben-Gurion, although it was just bits 1948 to 53. He resigned, came back in 55 until 63. And if you add it all up, he was in power for longer than Netanyahu has been altogether. If Netanyahu can get to the end of July, he will be the longest prime minister ever in Israeli history. Well, modern history. Actually, in the old days, they never had prime ministers or presidents. They had kings and queens. And he's likely to get beyond July because the election is not until September. So he's acting prime minister. So, is it complicated? Yeah. Is it interesting? Any questions? Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. We're going to bring a microphone to you. Oh, it's okay.
Is there any way that the parties can be restricted?
Is it a good idea that maybe we should turn it on, or should we just? If you just pass it back to Tony there, who is going to.
Is there a way that there could be a limit or restriction to the parties, not to have so many?
So the question is, should there be legislation introduced into the Knesset to not have as many political parties? There is a way, but is the Israeli members of Knesset going to waste time in passing that legislation? Because if you cannot get 3.25%, which parties know, you're not going to get into the Knesset anyway. If you look at the figures, and I spend a lot of time after the election, I look at the demographics, I look at exactly how many votes they got, I look at where those votes came from. You can tell which cities, so you know who the Arabs are voting for, who the religious, the strictly Orthodox would be, the more Dati Le'umim, modern Orthodox, if you like, the secular areas and certain areas in Tel Aviv. It's done by demographics as such like that, and you get an idea of who's voting for who as such. So if they want to run, let them run, but they're wasted votes. And that's why, by the way, polls, in my opinion, are essential. Some people say the polls get it wrong all the time. All the time. They got it wrong in Brexit, they got it wrong in Trump, they got it wrong in the 2015 election, they got it wrong because in the 2015 election, it was actually the Labour? Yes, it was the Labour Party was supposed to win, but which was known then as the Mahane Zioni, the Zionist camp. And they got 24 seats in the end, and Netanyahu got 30 seats. So it's really, the polls get it wrong all the time. But in my opinion, I don't think the polls get it wrong. I think, certainly in Israel, and as a voter myself, although this was the first time ever this century I've been out of Israel for a general election. Felt very strange, I have to tell you. And I was missing all the action. I was watching it live on my phone. But first time ever. But when you go into that booth, a lot of people make up their mind in the booth. And I know several journalists, in fact, a lady called Lahav, who is now the Jerusalem Post editor. She was somebody who spent several years in the Knesset, is very well versed. She also admitted she decided who she was going to vote for in that booth. Because you've got all the slips in front of you, and you're thinking, you know what, I'm going to vote for that right-wing party. Or I'm going to vote for that centre party. But you know what? Likud might need me. Or the other party, Kadima, in 2015. Blue and White in 2019. They might need me. So you pick up that slip, you put it in there, that's your vote. So the pollsters can't be responsible for somebody who changes their mind. Or in the case with, I don't want to get off the subject over here, in the case with Jeremy Corbyn in the 2017 election, the pollsters can't really be responsible for those people who claimed that they were never ever going to vote, suddenly come out and start voting. Anyway, I digress. Is there anyone else who would like to ask something? Because those chairs must be very uncomfortable.
Hello.
Hello. Little wave there.
You've talked about what went wrong. So what can go right this time? What has to change for one of the parties to actually be able to form a government?
Well, it's a good question. And what Netanyahu would say is that all the votes should go to his party, so therefore he's going to get a majority and he's going to be able to form a government of 61 seats or more. But anything is possible. I can tell you this, though. The Blue and White Party, which is that opposition party, remember the party which is made up of 3 parties, came together on the basis, anyone but Bibi, it's showing some splinters right now. Up till 10 days ago, actually it was about a week ago, Yesh Atid, the leader, Yair Lapid, he said he could not actually confirm in front of the cameras whether he was going to run again with them or not. He's now confirmed it, and now they're going to run together. But also what the Likud did was, and you can argue whether this was a nice thing to do or not a nice thing to do, but they went to certain candidates who got in on the Blue and White list, that's the name of the party, and tried to get them to break away. I like you, you, and you, and you. Break away. Form your own faction. Join the government. You get Minister of Justice. You get the environment. You get a deputy health position. Couldn't do it because they stuck together like glue. There are signs right now that there is beginning to be a little bit of a splinter, and their pollster numbers are going down a little bit. But anything can happen on the election day. Yes, sir.
I've got a couple of questions, actually. The first question, you mentioned that both leading parties got 35 seats.
Yeah.
So why did the president go to Netanyahu and ask him to form a government rather than the other party? Is it because he was an incumbent?
So just to double check, the question is, why doesn't the main Likud party go with Blue and White and you got 70 seats?
No, why did the president go to Netanyahu and with his 35 seats rather than the leader of the other party who had 35 seats?
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing properly. Can you just say that again? Because it's not clear. It could be me.
He's asking why both of them had 35 seats, why he didn't choose Blue and White to have the first shot at forming a government.
Thank you. Right. And your second question?
The second question is, do you think that Israeli politics is a good example or a good advert for proportional representation?
Okay, everyone hear the question, I guess so, because you're chuckling over there. So the first question was, why did the president not ask the head of Blue and White, Benny Gantz, to form a coalition? 2 reasons. Number one is because that legislation was put forward very quickly in the Knesset to dissolve the Knesset and call for election very quickly before Benny Gantz had that opportunity. But the reason why the president did not stop the process, although he said he would do everything in his power to prevent another election, is because the blue and white have no one to partner up with. The Labour Party got 6 seats. So maybe the Labour Party, under the leadership of Avi Gabay, 35 plus 6. The Meretz Party is known in Israel as a far left party. In fact, out of all the 47 political parties that ran, only one party campaigned on a 2-state solution. That was the Meretz Party. The Labour Party wouldn't even touch it because they know it's toxic. There's no way of a 2-state solution. Anytime the first step, which could be many years away, is reconciliation. At least Mr. Mahmoud Abbas or whoever takes over come to sit down at the table. They refuse to sit. So there's no point talking about something in step number 165 when you can't even see step number 1. It doesn't make sense. So he had no chance. Blue and white, 35 plus 6. Kulanu, which had 4 seats, led by Moshe Kahlon, who was a former Likud man, but broke away because he didn't get on well with Netanyahu, but has been the finance minister. He may have joined had there been enough seats. The religious parties won't join because Yair Lapid is with him. So they won't join because Yair Lapid is considered to be a secular person who's also supporting the army. Victor Lieberman wouldn't join. He endorsed Netanyahu. He says that Benny Gantz is somebody who is going to make concessions with the Palestinians, whatever that would be. And the other party would be the Union of Right-Wing Parties, which is made up of Jewish Home, National Union, and the far-right party Otzma Yehudit. They were certainly not going to join what was considered to be a left. So it was just impossible to put it together. Does that answer your question, sir? Oh. Yeah. But you still need to get a minimum of the 61 seats out of the 120-seat Knesset. So, in fact, actually, the Arab parties, which they got 10 seats, there's two main Arab parties. One of them got 4 seats, the other one got 6 seats. By the way, for this next election, they're going to join up again together. And last time they got 13 seats. They split because, like the Jewish people, they also have a big, tough time getting on with each other. They split, they got back together again, they split, and apparently they're getting back together again. They got 10 seats, but they also voted to dissolve the parliament because they openly said, we don't care. We're happy to keep dissolving the parliament. We don't care. We're certainly not going to join any government. The Arabs, despite what the media might say, by the way, why don't you bring in the Arabs? Despite what Israelis say, the Arabs always say, we're not going to join a government. We might sometimes support you by votes if we feel it's in our interest. We're not going to join you. Time for a couple more? Okay, then we'll wrap it up.
The next election is due for later on in September. I believe approximately some 2 weeks later, the Attorney General is due to issue the prosecution. Timing-wise, how is this all going to pan out? And I speak as somebody who sincerely hopes that Netanyahu will be returned. He has done wonderful things for the country. The population has doubled in the last 10 years. The GDP has more than doubled. It's doing fantastically well economically. Yes, there is poverty. I believe in the next week or 2, there is a major conference hosted by Netanyahu in Israel between America and Russia on security. Mm-hmm. And as you already mentioned, Netanyahu has all the connections in the whole world.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, actually, that was something which I, without just putting a question aside just for one moment, this is a Israeli prime minister who has the ear of the US president. The ear. That means literally that you pick up the phone, a bit like calling your husband, your wife, and you get through to the president. But not only that, you get through to President Putin as well. He has the ear of President Putin. It's quite extraordinary that the contacts that he's built up. And I must just, if I may just quickly just tell you a story which you might be interested in. The Israeli intelligence found out this was something that was told to me. Oh, Ze'ev Elkin, the Likud man, who, by the way, was responsible for the coalition agreements, together with Yariv Levin, another Likud member of Knesset, and it didn't work. There was a terrorist attack, an imminent terrorist attack, which was going to take place somewhere in Russia. And the Israeli intelligence notified the Russian counterparts. They looked into it, they discovered it, they foiled it, they arrested the people, and it turned out that it was true, it was valid, and it saved the lives perhaps of a lot of people in Russia. Netanyahu came to visit Putin a couple of weeks later, and Ze'ev Elkin was with him. And Putin was very thankful, naturally. You saved a lot of lives. Is there something that I can do for you? And he says, he couldn't think of anything. There must be something. Well, there's a few things on the list. I'm sure we're looking into it, right? And I'll speak to you. Thank you. Is there really? You don't understand what you've done for us. Is this? And he says it came to him right there and then. And that was that the Israeli intelligence had found out that one of the 3 soldiers from the 1982 war, where they in Syria, the 1982. Actually, the Lebanon war at that time, these 3 soldiers were taken into Syria, paraded on a tank. It wasn't clear if they were alive or dead at the time. Yehuda Katz, Zvi Feldman, I know the family of Feldman, and Mr. Barmel. Can you remind me his first name? His first name? Is it Yehuda Barmel? It could be. Mr. Barmel. So they knew exactly where he was buried in Syria. And the Russians were in control of that area. So he said, look, we know where the body is. Can you get the body for us and help us bring it to Israel? He said, no problem. Give me the coordinates. I'll sort it out. He made a couple of calls. It was done. You do not refuse President Putin, because his democracy doesn't quite work like the United States and ours. And Balmel's body was taken to Israel. It was buried. And the family said to Netanyahu, came round for the Shiva. The Shiva, yes, it was known as a Shiva. And said, we've hated you for years. You could have done so much for us. We've hated you. But I can't tell you how much we thank you now for bringing this to a close. Having said all that little story, I've just actually forgotten what your question is. Just shout out of it. Yeah. Yeah. So Netanyahu's lawyers are trying to get another postponement for later into 2020 to have enough. They're just trying to put it off. In the meantime, as you probably know, they were trying to get this legislation through that said that you cannot indict a sitting prime minister. It was a bit unpopular with some of the people in Israel. Not sure they're going to put that through. But by the way, this 3 indictments against Netanyahu is based on a hearing. The hearing may be in September, October, maybe that hearing, Netanyahu gets the opportunity to respond to the allegations, and none of us, despite what some people say, none of us know exactly what the evidence is. The Attorney General does and the police officers do, but none of us do. The journalists in Israel will speculate, but they don't know what it is. Let Netanyahu respond to those allegations, and then there could be a long trial of 2, 3, 4 years or whatever it is. The question is, does he remain prime minister or is he forced to resign? And then there's a good leadership challenge. Moving on. Okay.
Assuming the population of Israel vote exactly as they did before,
oh, but they never do the same thing twice.
How long could this fast continue?
Well, once again, September the 17th, you get the results. Following morning, they come through, September the 18th. Don't remember when Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur fall, because then... Okay, so then you've got the High Holy Days coming up as well. Yosef Yemei Teshuvah. So there'll be a little bit of tshuva going on during those days. And then afterwards, again, you get your standard 28 days, and then you get your extra 2 weeks, which you always want. There is certain cases whereby if you're already in the negotiations, you can actually ask the president, look, I'm just there. We just need another few days. The president can It's never been enacted before, but the president can give you an extra week or even another 2 weeks on top of those 2 weeks, which is on top of the 28 days. So basically, they've got a lot of time to go ahead and do this. However, we just have to see what's going to happen. It really depends upon whether the voters will switch to the main two parties or whether they go for the smaller parties. But the problem is that the smaller parties make too many demands. And I think was one other thing which was said, maybe, is there a change to the PR system? Should it be something else? I was a campaigner, along with other people, that I have to say that I do support the PR system in Israel, because in Israel you've got so many different views from so many different backgrounds, and I think those people should be represented. But the problem is that you don't have the members of Knesset representing areas, districts, constituencies, like we do over here. So in other words, we expect in Israel our members of Knesset to come round, knock on the door, and say, I want your vote. You want to see that? It doesn't happen in Israel. You vote for the party. And that's when things go wrong. Nobody takes responsibilities. It's one of the problems. I'm just going to wrap up over here because I think it's getting a little bit late, and I'm sure the seats are maybe a little uncomfortable after all of this time as well. I just want to wrap up just with a couple of words. That I want to tell you that the State of Israel, as you know, came into being in 1948. The first elections were in 1949. And we've had 21 Knessets since that time. Generally, politically, it's been very, very stable. However, as you know, Israel has been really under a great deal of defensive actions and pressure from the south, from the east, from the north, internally with internal terrorism. There's been so much strife, there's been so much violence, there's been so many people killed, wars, terrorism, the Intifada, 2, 3, 4 times, the suicide bombings. In any other country like that, any other country, and specifically Africa, where almost every single African country has been at some civil war at one time or not, in the last just 30, 40 years, a military junta, a dictator has moved in and taken control. That has never, ever happened in Israel before. They've never even thought about something like that. They rely on democratic rights, democratic votes. They believe, they might have heated arguments, but they believe in the ability to allow the people to vote for political parties and for governments to run. And that's something, despite whatever our own political colours are, and whichever party or prime minister that we might actually support or turn against, Israel is a truly stable beacon of light to the other nations of the world. A country that is plagued with so much death and destruction still runs as if it's the United States or the UK, where business as usual. And that's something that we can all be very proud of. Thank you very much.
I'd now like to call on Helen French to propose a vote of thanks.
I'm completely bowled over by your fantastic knowledge and articulate speaking and information about a subject that is so complex, and your phenomenal memory for names and places and dates, which, if I go away remembering 10% of what you've said today, I think I'll be very fortunate. I think I can speak for a lot of people in this room as well. We love Israel, and we watch with pride and sometimes trepidation as to what is going to happen to our beloved country. And we hate the criticism of Israel. We hate the criticism of our politicians, but we don't live there. You live there, and you've given us a very factual account as to what is happening. It is such a shame to think that so many millions, hundreds of millions, are going to be spent again on another election when it could very well be spent on helping the poor of Israel. Thank you very much for this wonderful talk. I wish you to go from strength to strength and do the hasbara for our country, which I'm sure I know you do very, very well. Thank you very much indeed, and please come again and give us another update. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
On behalf of the school, I'd like to present you with it. Yes.
My goodness me, I'm
Thank you very much.
I don't know what to say. I'm deeply humbled and very honoured, and thank you very much. I have to just briefly say to you that I didn't recognise this lady, Helen French, when she walked in. She immediately recognised me. I'm amazed at how she looks. She looks younger than me, and she remembers me when I was 3 years old. So I just don't know what it is that you're doing, but you have to tell me if it's Nivea or oil of Ulay, because I would like to start using it. Thank you. Wow.